Let's make my Vampire Hunter quilt pattern using fat quarters. Fat quarters are 18 inches by 20-inch rectangles, and this pattern is available as a free PDF in 4 quilt sizes: throw, twin, queen, and king, which I will link down below in the video's description. The baby size has been omitted because this is a huge quilt block and you will lose the pattern. For today's video, I will be making the twin size quilt measuring at 60 inches by 75 inches. It's on the smaller side, so feel free to add a border if you'd like. There are no rules, just have fun while making it. I am using Spooky and Witchy Fat Quarter Bundle for my prints and Decostitch in Ballet for my background fabrics, all from Art Gallery Fabrics. Although I am using a Halloween print and this pattern is Halloween name based, this would be great in any other prints as it's a play on a chain style quilt. You can even do farm prints, Civil War prints, or even a spring bright palette. But either way, let's get started. With each fat quarter subcut 4 6-inch squares, 4 3-inch by 5.5-inch rectangles, 2 5-inch squares, and 4 3.5-inch squares. Since we are working with fat quarters, the free PDF pattern includes a cutting diagram to help you yield all of the necessary pieces for reference. With your background yardage, you will cut 40 6-inch squares, 80 3-inch by 5.5-inch rectangles, and 40 3.5-inch squares. Now let's create your quilt block. Select a print 3.5-inch square and a background 3.5-inch square. On the wrong side of the fabric, draw a 45-degree line with your fabric marking tool. Place the print 3.5-inch squares and the background 3.5-inch square on top of each other, right sides together, and sew a 1/4-inch seam allowance on both sides of that line you just drew. You'll then cut on that line with a fabric scissors or rotary cutter to create 2 3-inch half square triangles. Repeat this step until you have a total of 4 half square triangles in the same print, as we will use these half square triangles to form a pinwheel quilt block. Sew the blocks together into rows, and lastly sew those rows together to complete a 5.5-inch square pinwheel. Next, take 2 background 3-inch by 5.5-inch rectangles and 1 5.5-inch print square. Sew the 3-inch by 5.5-inch rectangles to the left and right side of that print square. Now we will take 1 background and 1 print 3-inch by 5.5-inch rectangles and sew them together on the 5.5-inch side, creating a 5.5-inch square. Make 2 of these in the same print. Lastly, we are going to select a print 6-inch square and a background 6-inch square, and on the wrong side of the fabric, draw a 45-degree line with a fabric marking tool. Place the print square and background square on top of each other, right sides together, and sew a 1/4-inch seam allowance on both sides of that line you drew. Then you'll cut on that line to create a total of 2 5.5-inch half square triangles. Repeat this step until you have a total of 4 half square triangles in the same print. Now that we have all of our pieces, it is time to create the quilt block. Place all of those blocks like so, and sew the blocks together into rows, and lastly sew those rows together to complete a 15.5-inch square. Repeat all of this until you have a total of 20 quilt blocks. You will yield 2 quilt blocks in the same print, or if you'd like, you can mix up all of your prints to give it a scrappy look. Now, with all of those blocks we just made, for the twin size, you will lay them out in a 4x5 block layout. For the odd rows, place the pinwheel side to the left side, then rotate the second block 180 degrees, and you'll repeat this pattern throughout the odd row. Then for your even rows, rotate your block 180 degrees to place that pinwheel on the right side. And then for the second block, rotate it to where the pinwheels are touching each other, and you'll repeat this pattern throughout the row. This will then give that pattern a brick style layout. And as always, sew those blocks together into rows, and lastly, sew the rows together to complete your quilt top. And stay till the end so you can get a better look at the quilts since this pattern is huge. Now I do apologize, but my quilt top video section sadly got corrupted, but stay till the end so you can see a larger photo of the finished quilt. But for the backing, I chose Fantastic Lips from an older collection called Sweet and Spookier by Art Gallery Fabrics. And then for the thread choice, I went with Glide threads in the color Pink Rose. But here is what it looks like all quilted out. For my long arm quilters, I chose my pattern called Sword of Destiny, which I will link down below. This is a personal quilt, and the quilt pattern isn't the best choice, but honestly, it was between this pattern and Garlic. Because I wanted to play with the fact that this pattern is called Vampire Hunter, I also wanted to continue the story within the quilting. And I ended up choosing Sword of Destiny instead because I've only used that pattern once and I thought, why not? But here is a larger photo of my Vampire Hunter quilt. Once again, this pattern is available as a free PDF in 4 quilt sizes: throw, twin, queen, and king. And I do hope you have enjoyed today's tutorial. If you could please take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you can be notified for your next amazing quilt project.